Humiliated for having no status, a woman believes she will never truly be chosen, until a count surprises her with a proposal based on respect, not passion. Everything seemed under control, until the man who hurt her reappears before everyone. If you like love and romance stories, watch until the end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comment saying where you are listening to this beautiful story from. Let's continue. Marina always knew she wasn't born for the salons of São Paulo. She came from Franca, in the interior of the state of São Paulo, where her father managed a small rural property and her mother took care of the house with the same dedication she gave to the vegetable garden in the back of the plot. Life there was simple, but she never lacked dignity. She grew up helping with the harvests, studying at night after work, learning that beauty was not in expensive dresses, but in the way one walked through the world. At 22, she had the serene face of someone who never needed to force a smile to be noticed, deep brown eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets, and an upright posture that impressed with its naturalness. She wasn't vain, but she knew she drew attention. The problem was never her appearance. The problem was always where she came from. Tiago Mendes appeared in her life like a whirlwind of promises. A recent graduate in administration, he already worked at an agricultural consulting firm in Ribeirão Preto and had plans too big to fit in a small town. He met Marina at a barbecue of mutual friends and was fascinated. She was different from the other women he knew, calmer, more genuine, less concerned with impressing. For 6 months, he courted her intensely. He talked about the future they would build together, about how she would be perfect by his side, about how her simplicity enchanted him. Marina believed him. For the first time, she allowed her heart to take over, her defenses to lower and her hopes to grow without restraint. Her family loved Tiago. Her father thought he was hard-working and ambitious, qualities he respected. Her mother was moved to see her daughter in love. Marina began to imagine the wedding, the children, the stable life beside a man who seemed to see her as enough. She never asked for luxury, never demanded changes. She only offered the best of what she had, loyalty, companionship, and honest and complete love. But Tiago was aiming for other horizons. While he was with Marina, he was already attending corporate events in São Paulo, networking with powerful people, measuring every step, thinking about how to climb faster in the social and professional hierarchy. It was at one of these events, a year-end party for the company where he worked, that everything crumbled. Marina went with him, wearing the most beautiful dress she had, simple but elegant, trying not to show how nervous she was among all those people. Tiago introduced her to some colleagues dismissively, almost as if he were fulfilling a boring obligation. She noticed the distance, the growing coldness, but tried to ignore it. Until in the middle of the party, he struck up a conversation with Camila Fonseca, the daughter of one of the company's partners, a beautiful, sophisticated young woman full of references that Marina didn't even know. The girl spoke about a season in Paris, an MBA in London, imported wines. Tiago was dazzled. Marina saw when he distanced himself from her completely, when he began to circulate alone through the party, when he returned only to get another drink without even asking if she was okay. She felt the humiliation growing slowly, like water rising in a glass that was too full. But the worst was yet to come. Near midnight, she tried to approach him again, touched his arm gently, and suggested they leave. Tiago looked at her with an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of annoyance and impatience. And then, without lowering his voice, without worrying about who was nearby, he said the words that would destroy her for years. "Marina, you're a good person, but you need to understand one thing. I have big plans, you know. I'm going to work with important people, frequent places you can't even imagine. And sincerely, a woman like you, without a university degree, without social grace coming from the interior, without a surname, without anything besides, I don't know, goodwill, has no place by my side. I need someone who helps me climb, not someone who holds me down. Sorry if I'm being too direct, but it's better you know now than waste more time with me." The silence around them was brutal. Several people heard. Some looked away in embarrassment. Others laughed softly, as if it were just another party drama. Marina felt the ground give way, the air escape her, her chest tighten in a knot so strong she thought she might faint. She didn't cry there. She didn't give him or the others that satisfaction. She simply grabbed her purse, left the hall, and hailed a taxi on the street. The return to Franca was the longest trip of her life. Every kilometer seemed to amplify the pain, the shame, the feeling of having been used and discarded like something disposable. The following months were a blur of effort to rebuild what had been broken. Marina didn't tell her family what had really happened. She only said they broke up because they weren't compatible. But inside, something essential had died. Her trust in men, her belief that love was enough, her hope that character was worth more than money. She went back to working on the family's small farm with even more dedication, as if hard work could erase the memory. She helped her father with the administration, took care of the accounting, organized the sale of products. She discovered she had a talent for management, that she understood numbers, that she could negotiate with middlemen and distributors better than many people with a diploma hanging on the wall. Her beauty was still there, but now it was accompanied by a new coldness. When someone approached with interest, Marina built invisible walls. She would agree to talk, agree to go out for a coffee, but she never let anyone pass the surface. The men who tried to get close soon realized she wasn't emotionally available, and most gave up quickly. Some persisted. They proposed dating, marriage, a stable life in the interior. But all the proposals seemed empty, limited, too small. They were either men without ambition, who only wanted a wife to take care of the house, or opportunists who saw in her a beautiful and hard-working woman who would bear good children and cause no problems. None of them truly saw her. None of them recognized her intelligence, her strength, her capability. Over time, Marina convinced herself that she would be alone. It wasn't self-pity, it was just acceptance. She preferred solitude to mediocre company. She preferred the dignity of silence to the humiliation of giving herself to someone who didn't deserve her. She made peace with the idea that perhaps marriage wasn't for her, that perhaps her life was something else, built on other terms. And it was precisely when she stopped looking, when she no longer expected anything, that Rafael Alcantara entered her story. Rafael was the owner of one of the largest rural properties in the region, specialized in export coffee and beef cattle. The Santa Helena farm was known throughout the state, not only for its size, but for its efficiency and the impeccable reputation built over 3 generations. Rafael had inherited everything from his father, but he was not a man to waste an inheritance. He worked as hard as any employee, knew every inch of land, every detail of the operation. He was 42 years old, single, serious, little given to smiles or superficial conversations. Local society always speculated about why such a well-positioned man had never married. Some said he was too demanding, others that he was too cold, others still that he simply had no interest in women. The truth was simpler. Rafael didn't believe in marriage for passion. He had already seen friends marry amidst eternal promises and divorce bitterly 5 years later. He didn't want that. If one day he decided to marry, it would be for practical reasons, to build something solid, to choose a partner who understood the weight of managing a complex life. Marina's father knew Rafael by sight, from cattle auctions and agricultural cooperative meetings. They had never spoken much, but there was mutual respect. It was in one of these meetings that Rafael asked about Mr. Oliveira's daughter. He had heard that the young woman was intelligent, that she helped manage the property, that she had a good head for numbers. The father, surprised but proud, confirmed everything. Rafael asked to meet her in person. It wasn't a request for a date, it wasn't flirting, it was almost a business interview. Old Oliveira didn't quite understand, but he agreed. Marina received Rafael on a Saturday afternoon on the porch of the house. She was in simple clothes, jeans and a cotton shirt, her hair tied in a ponytail without makeup. She made no effort to impress, because she didn't even really know what that man wanted. Rafael greeted her with formal politeness, accepted the coffee she offered, and went straight to the point. He said he was looking for a wife. Not for love, he made clear right away, but for practical necessity. He needed someone capable of managing the main house of the farm, of receiving important guests, of circulating at social events with poise, of understanding the workings of a large property. In exchange, he would offer stability, comfort, respect, and a social position that she would never reach alone. Marina listened to him in silence, trying to process the strangeness of that conversation. When he finished, she asked in a calm voice, "Why me?" Raphael looked her in the eyes for the first time with real attention and replied, "Because you have what I need. You know how to work. You aren't frivolous, you aren't fragile, you have practical intelligence. And because, unlike many women I've met, you don't seem to be looking for a fairy tale. That interests me." The answer was so direct, so devoid of romanticism, that Marina almost laughed. But there was truth there, a raw truth that she recognized immediately. He wasn't offering love. He was offering something she had never received from Tiago: honesty. She asked for time to think. Raphael agreed, left his number, and departed without haste. Marina stood on the porch for an hour after he left, trying to understand what had just happened. That night she talked to her mother. The woman was shocked by the proposal, thinking it too cold, heartless, but Marina was already tired of the heart. Her heart had only served to hurt. What Raphael offered was different. It was a clear agreement, without lies, without promises that wouldn't be kept. She could have a dignified, respected, protected life. And more importantly, she would never again be treated as someone who had no value. She thought for 3 days, and in the end, she accepted. The wedding was set for 2 months later. No big party, no exaggerations, just the families, a few close friends, and the justice of the peace. Marina wore a simple white dress that her mother helped her choose. Raphael wore a dark suit and tie. During the ceremony, they exchanged rings and formal promises. There was no passionate kiss at the altar, no intense looks, just a firm handshake and a sealed agreement. But when Raphael placed the ring on her finger, something moved deep in Marina's chest. It wasn't love, it was relief. And maybe, just maybe, a small and frightened hope that this time it would be different. The Santa Helena farm was larger than Marina imagined. The car passed through the main gate and followed a dirt road lined with coffee plantations that seemed to have no end. The main house appeared after 15 minutes on the road, imposing, colonial, painted white with dark wood details. It had 2 floors, a wide porch with thick columns, and a front garden that seemed to require full-time gardener work. Marina felt her stomach tighten. That wasn't just a house. It was an estate, a responsibility, an entire universe that she was now expected to manage. Raphael parked in front and got out to open the door for her. A simple, polite gesture, but one that caught Marina by surprise. Tiago had never done that. Raphael extended his hand to help her down and said in a neutral voice, "Welcome to your home." There was no emotion in the phrase, but there was no falsehood either. It was just a fact. This was now her home. Marina took a deep breath and entered. Inside, the house was even more impressive. High ceilings, old but well-maintained furniture, family paintings on the walls, the smell of lavender and waxed wood. A middle-aged woman appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. Raphael introduced her as Donna Irene, the housekeeper for 20 years, responsible for the staff and general organization. The woman greeted Marina with respect, but with a certain reserve, as if she were sizing up the new mistress. Marina responded with kindness, but realized she would have to earn her space there, that nothing would be given for free. Raphael showed her the whole house. The guest rooms on the ground floor, the library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, the formal dining room that seated 20 people, his office where he managed the business. On the second floor, he showed her the master bedroom. It was spacious with a king-size bed, built-in solid wood closets, and a private bathroom with an old bathtub. Marina looked around, trying to imagine what it would be like to sleep there. Raphael noticed the tension and said bluntly, "You have the freedom to change whatever you want in here. It's your room now, and don't worry, I sleep in the room next door. I won't pressure you with anything you aren't ready for." His clarity, the way he established boundaries without embarrassment, brought an unexpected relief. Marina thanked him with a nod. Raphael left the room and left her alone to settle in. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked out the window. From there, she saw the pastures stretching as far as the eye could see, the scattered cattle, workers coming and going. It was all so different from the simple house where she had grown up. For a moment, she felt afraid of not being able to handle it, of disappointing him, of proving that Tiago was right, and she really had no place in environments like this. But then she remembered Raphael's words. "You have what I need." He hadn't said that out of kindness. He said it because he believed it, and that was enough for her to try. The first few days were a quiet adaptation. Marina woke up early, as she always had her whole life, and had breakfast with Raphael before he went out to supervise the work on the farm. He wasn't one to talk much, but he asked about what she needed, if she was comfortable, if Donna Irene was being helpful. Marina took advantage of the freedom he gave her and began to learn the house routine. She accompanied Donna Irene in organizing the pantry, understood how the staff schedule worked, reviewed the domestic accounts. She discovered that several things could be optimized, that there was waste in some sectors. Careful not to offend the housekeeper, she suggested changes. Donna Irene resisted at first, but when she saw that Marina's ideas really made sense and saved money, she began to respect her. Raphael noticed the changes. At dinner, he commented that the house expenses had dropped 15% in the last month, without any loss in quality. He looked at Marina with something that could be approval and said, "You are efficient. I like that." It wasn't an effusive compliment, it wasn't a passionate declaration, but coming from him it meant a lot. Marina felt a small but real satisfaction. She was proving her value. She was showing that she deserved to be there. Their coexistence established its own rhythm. They had dinner together every night, talked about the day, about the challenges of the farm, about practical matters. Raphael began to ask for her opinion on certain decisions. He wanted to know what she thought about investing in new technology for irrigation, if it was worth expanding the pasture or focusing more on coffee. Marina answered with sincerity, using the knowledge she had learned on her father's property. He listened attentively, considered what she said, and sometimes followed the suggestions. She realized he didn't see her as an ornament. He really wanted her opinion. He trusted her judgment. But the real test would come in a few weeks. Raphael received an invitation to a charity dinner in São Paulo, organized by the State Agriculture Federation. It was an important event, with powerful farmers, politicians, and agribusiness entrepreneurs. It would be Marina's public debut as his wife. He handed the invitation to her during breakfast and said, "You're coming with me. Wear something elegant, but without exaggeration. These people value discretion." Marina took the invitation and felt her stomach turn. São Paulo, elite. Exactly the kind of environment where she had been humiliated. And worse, there was a chance of meeting Tiago there. He worked in agricultural consulting. He had contacts in that circle. The possibility was real and terrifying. She spent the next few days trying to prepare. She bought a dress in Ribeirão Preto, navy blue, elegant but sober, which didn't draw too much attention but also didn't go unnoticed. She asked the city hairdresser for help with a classic updo. She mentally rehearsed how she would behave, what she would say, how she would avoid appearing out of place. But beneath all the planning, fear pulsed. Fear of not being up to the task, fear of embarrassing Raphael, fear of proving she didn't belong in that world, and above all, fear of meeting the man who had shattered her confidence and having to pretend she was fine. On the night before the event, Raphael entered the office where she was trying to read about the history of the Agricultural Federation so as not to seem ignorant. He approached, pulled up a chair, and sat in front of her. "You're nervous," he said. And it was not a question. Marina thought about denying it, but there was no use lying to someone who observed her with such attention. "I am," she admitted. "I'm afraid of embarrassing you. I'm afraid of not knowing how to behave, of saying something stupid, of—" She stopped, unable to say the rest. Raphael looked her in the eyes and said firmly, "You won't embarrass me. You are intelligent, you have poise, you know how to listen before speaking. That's more than 90% of the people at this party. And another thing." He paused. "You are my wife. Anyone who doesn't treat you with respect will have to deal with me, understood?" The declaration was not romantic, but it carried a weight that Marina had never felt before. It was protection. It was loyalty. It was the promise that she wouldn't be alone. She thanked him in a low voice, and Raphael left the office, leaving her calmer, but still apprehensive. That night she hardly slept. She kept imagining scenarios, preparing answers, trying to shield herself against what might happen. The trip to São Paulo was silent. Rafael drove with focus. Marina watched the landscape pass without really seeing it. When they arrived at the hotel where the dinner would be held, she felt her chest tighten. The hall was full of elegant people, loud conversations, polished laughter. Rafael guided her through the crowd with a firm hand on her back, greeting acquaintances, introducing her naturally, "My wife, Marina." Every time he said it, she felt a mix of pride and disbelief. Wife, his, of that man everyone respected. They managed to get through the first hour without any major incidents. Marina talked to some farmers' wives, answered questions about what it was like to live at Santa Helena, listened to unasked-for advice on how to manage a large house. She was starting to relax, thinking she might survive the night without disaster, when she heard the voice that had haunted her for years. "Marina, Marina Oliveira, I can't believe it's you." She turned slowly and came face to face with Tiago Mendes. He was older, with too much gel in his hair, an expensive but poorly fitted suit, and the fake smile she knew well. Beside him was Camila Fonseca, the same woman from the party where everything had crumbled, now with a ring on her finger. They had married. Of course they had. Marina felt the ground shake, but forced herself to maintain her composure. "Tiago," she said in a neutral voice. "Camila." Tiago looked her up and down, evaluating. "You're different, more elegant. I didn't know you frequented this type of event now. Did you get a job at some large farm?" The tone was condescending, as if she were still the same woman from the interior he had despised. Marina took a deep breath, about to respond, when she felt Rafael's presence beside her. He had returned from a conversation with a group of businessmen and noticed the tension immediately. "Is there a problem?" Rafael asked, looking directly at Tiago. There was something in his voice, a coldness Marina had never heard before. Tiago gave a nervous laugh. No problem. Just greeting an old acquaintance. We're from the interior, grew up in the same region. Marina worked on her father's farm, if I'm not mistaken." The contempt was there, poorly disguised. Rafael did not look away. "Marina doesn't work on her father's farm anymore. Now she manages mine. I am Rafael Alcantara, owner of the Santa Helena farm, and this is my wife." The silence that followed was absolute. Tiago turned pale. Camilla's eyes widened, and the people around who were paying attention to the conversation had reactions ranging from surprise to poorly disguised satisfaction. Everyone there knew Santa Helena. Everyone knew who Rafael Alcantara was, and now everyone knew that the woman Tiago had just treated with disdain was his wife, the coffee countess, as some called the wives of the big farmers. Tiago tried to recover, stammering something about not knowing, about having lost contact. Rafael cut him off with glacial politeness. "I imagine not. After all, how long has it been since you last spoke, Marina?" 3 years. She confirmed with a firm voice, surprised by her own calmness. Rafael continued, still looking at Tiago. "In any case, I suggest that when you meet my wife again, you treat her with the proper respect. Good night." And with that, he placed his hand on Marina's back and guided her away, leaving Tiago standing there, red with shame and anger. Marina was trembling, not with fear but with an emotion she couldn't name. Rafael took her to the hotel balcony, away from the crowd. "Are you okay?" he asked. She looked at him, this man who had married her for convenience, who promised no love, who kept emotional distance. And she realized he had done something Tiago never had. He had defended her, not with empty words, not with pretty promises, but with concrete action, in front of everyone. He had put that man in his place without raising his voice, without losing his composure, simply making it clear that no one would mess with his wife. "I am," she replied, and it was true. For the first time in years, she was truly well. The return to Santa Helena farm was different from the trip there. Rafael drove in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, not a tense one. Marina looked out the window, still processing what had happened. The humiliation she expected never came. Instead, she had received something she never imagined: public validation, protection, respect. Tiago had been put in his place without Raphael needing to lower himself or make a scene. It was all so controlled, so firm, so different from anything she had ever experienced. When they stopped at a gas station halfway, Raphael asked if she wanted coffee. She accepted, and he returned with 2 cups of brewed coffee and a package of starch biscuits. A small detail, but it touched her. He remembered she liked those biscuits. When they arrived home, it was almost midnight. Donna Irene had left everything tidy and gone. The house was silent, only the porch lights on. Raphael helped Marina take the bags from the car and went up with her to her room. At the door, she turned to him and said, for the first time with real emotion in her voice, "Thank you for what you did today. You didn't have to, but you did." Raphael looked at her with that intensity she was beginning to recognize when he really paid attention to something. "I did have to," he replied. "You are my wife. No one is going to disrespect you while I'm around. That's not a favor, Marina. It's an obligation." And he left for his own room before she could respond. Marina went in, changed her clothes, took off her makeup, but couldn't sleep. She lay there looking at the ceiling, replaying the scene at the party. Tiago's expression when he found out who she was now. The way Camila had been embarrassed, and mainly Raphael's controlled coldness. The way he didn't need to shout or threaten to make it clear she was important to him. It wasn't love yet, she knew that. It was principle. It was character. It was the way Raphael dealt with everything in life, with righteousness without beating around the bush. But it still moved her in a way she didn't expect. The following days brought a subtle but perceptible change in the dynamics between the two. Raphael began to spend more time at home. Before, he would stay at the farm until late afternoon, arrive tired, and go straight to his bath and dinner. Now he returned earlier, sometimes finding Marina in the library reading or in the office helping with the paperwork. He would sit near her, ask what she was doing, offer an opinion when she asked. Once she was racking her brains over the accounting of a batch of coffee that didn't balance, and he spent 2 hours helping to find the error. When they finally discovered it was a duplicate entry, Raphael laughed, a rare thing for him, and said, "You are stubborn, I like that." Marina smiled back and realized she was smiling more lately. The meals also changed. Before they were functional, routine greetings. Now they became real conversations. Raphael told her about the work, about the challenges of dealing with dishonest suppliers, about the concerns with the drought that threatened the next planting cycle. Marina contributed with ideas, asked intelligent questions, suggested solutions. He came to value her opinion as much as he would that of any expensive consultant. One night, after she suggested a partnership with smaller cooperatives to dilute the risk of loss, Raphael looked at her with something close to admiration and said, "You should have studied administration. You have a talent for it." Marina felt pride but answered honestly, "I didn't have money for college. Everything I know I learned by doing, making mistakes, fixing them." Raphael shook his head. "Sometimes practical experience is worth more than a diploma. You are proof of that." It was on one of those nights, after an especially long dinner in which they talked about everything from agricultural policy to childhood memories, that Raphael asked something that caught her by surprise. "The man from the party, Tiago, did you date?" Marina didn't expect the question. She thought about lying, about minimizing it, but something in the way Raphael asked, direct but without judgment, made her answer with the truth. "We dated. For 6 months. I thought we were going to get married. He made me believe that, but I discovered I was just a pastime while he didn't find someone better. Someone with money, with a surname, with social grace. He dismissed me at a party, in front of several people, saying I would never be enough to accompany someone with ambition." Her voice didn't tremble as she told the story, but Raphael noticed the old pain there, scarred but still sensitive. He was quiet for a moment, then said in a low but firm voice, "He's an idiot. And not just because he dismissed you, although that's reason enough, but because he confused status with character. That type of man will always be empty, Marina. He can accumulate money, positions, titles, but he will never have substance. You have it, and that is worth infinitely more." Marina looked at him, surprised by the intensity of the declaration. Raphael had never spoken like that before. He looked away as if he had revealed more than he intended and changed the subject. But the words kept echoing in her head for days. From then on, Marina began to notice things that previously went unnoticed. The way Raphael always ensured she had what she needed before taking care of his own needs. How he asked if she had slept well, if the day had been peaceful, if she needed anything. Small gestures of attention that didn't come accompanied by grand declarations, but were constant. When she mentioned she missed working with plants, having a vegetable garden like she had at her parents' house, he hired a gardener to prepare a plot in the back of the house specifically for her. When he realized she liked to read before sleeping, he brought back 3 books from a trip to São Paulo that he thought she would like. He was right about all of them. Marina also began to reciprocate without realizing it. She left the afternoon coffee ready just the way he liked it, with warm cheese bread she made herself. She organized his office, creating a system that made it easier to find documents. When he had a bad headache after a stressful day, she prepared chamomile tea and stayed talking quietly with him until the pain passed. They were small, everyday gestures, but they built something solid between the two, something that went beyond the initial agreement. One night, Raphael arrived later than usual, visibly tired and worried. Marina was in the living room reading, but she put down the book when she saw him. "Did something happen?" He slumped onto the sofa with a heavy sigh. "A problem with one of the international buyers, threatening to break the contract because the dollar rose and now it's too expensive. If I lose this client, I'll have a big loss this year." Marina sat beside him. "Are there other interested buyers?" He shook his head. "I have contacts, but nothing firm, nothing. And if I lower the price too much to keep this guy, I'll be working almost for free." Marina thought for a bit and said, "What if you don't lower the price but offer something that adds value? Sustainability certification, full traceability, audited quality guarantee. Europeans pay more for that. I saw in a report that coffee with environmental certification has a growing market." Raphael looked at her with renewed interest. "You read about that?" She shrugged. "I read it because I thought it might be useful someday. I could be wrong." He was quiet, processing, and suddenly smiled. Not a small smile, but a genuine one. "You're not wrong. It's an excellent idea. I'll call the people tomorrow morning and see how to get those certifications." He stood up, pulled Marina to her feet, and in an impulse that surprised both of them, embraced her. It was quick, but intense. When he pulled away, he said, "You're saving my harvest, you know?" He went to the office to take notes, leaving Marina standing in the living room, still feeling the warmth of the embrace. It was the first time they had truly touched since the wedding, and it was the first time Marina admitted to herself that Raphael was no longer just the man she had married out of convenience. He was becoming someone essential in her life, someone whose approval she sought, whose presence she missed when he left too early, whose voice she recognized by the sound of the truck arriving. He was becoming someone she wanted to see happy, not out of duty, but by choice. In the following weeks, the relationship between the two deepened even further. Raphael began to include Marina in important meetings on the farm, introducing her as a business partner, not just a wife. The employees began to go directly to her when they had problems because they knew she was efficient and fair. Marina's authority on the farm consolidated not because Raphael imposed it, but because she earned it, and he was proud of that. He once commented to the foreman in front of her, "The best decision I ever made was marrying her. The farm has never run so well." Marina also got to know the man behind the stern facade better. She discovered that Raphael liked traditional country music, that he sometimes played the viola alone in the office when he thought no one was listening, that he had a dry but sharp sense of humor, which appeared in quick comments that made her laugh, that he was generous with the employees, paid above the market, and helped in personal emergencies without fanfare, that he visited his mother, a widow, every week, and brought groceries and medicine without her having to ask, that he had a gentle side he hid from almost everyone, but that she was seeing more and more. One afternoon, Marina was in the vegetable garden he had ordered for her, picking tomatoes. When Raphael appeared, he stood watching her work, and when she noticed his presence and asked if he needed anything, he shook his head. "Only came to see you." The simplicity of the phrase contrasted with the weight it carried. Marina felt her heart race. He continued, "You seem happy here. In the garden, in the house. You seem at peace." She wiped her hands on her pants and approached him. "I am, more than I imagined possible." Raphael held her gaze for a moment too long to be casual. "Me too," he said. And he left, leaving Marina with a basket of tomatoes and a confused heart. That night, during dinner, she asked something she had been thinking about for days. "Raphael, why did you really marry me? The truth, not the practical version." He stopped eating, put down his fork, and thought before answering. "Because you were different. All the women I met either wanted my money or my surname, or were too frivolous to build something solid. You didn't want any of that. You accepted the marriage for practical reasons, just like I did. But from the first day I realized you had something none of them had, essence. You are real, Marina. Without pretense, without games. And I needed that in my life. I needed someone true." Marina felt tears burn in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "And now?" she asked in a low voice. "What am I to you now?" Raphael looked at her with an intensity that disarmed her. "Now you are more than I planned. Much more." He didn't say he loved her. He didn't make an eternal promise, but the weight of the confession was there, impossible to ignore. Marina understood at that moment that what she felt for Raphael was no longer gratitude or relief. It was love. The kind of love that grows slowly, that is built in everyday gestures, that solidifies in mutual respect and genuine admiration. It was a mature love, without illusions, but for that very reason stronger. They finished dinner in silence, but it was a silence full of things unsaid. When they went to sleep, Raphael stopped at her bedroom door and said, "Good night, Marina." She answered, "Good night," and stood there listening to his footsteps receding to the room next door. For the first time since they had married, she wished he hadn't left. The change between the two was palpable now, impossible to ignore. Marina woke up thinking about Raphael, caught herself waiting for the moment he would return home, missed his presence when he had to travel for work. The dinners stretched longer and longer, with conversations going from practical matters to more personal things. He told her about his father, a hard but fair man who had died of a heart attack when Raphael was 25, leaving the gigantic responsibility of the farm in his hands. He told her about how he had felt afraid of not being able to handle it, of disappointing his father's memory, of losing everything the family had built for generations, and how he had closed himself off emotionally after that, focusing only on work, on results, on keeping the legacy standing. "There was never room for anything else," he said with rare sincerity, "until you arrived." Marina also opened up. She told him about her mother, who died when she was 17, about how she had to take over the household responsibilities too early, about how she learned to be strong because she had no choice. She told him about the dreams she had when she was a girl, of studying, of knowing different places, dreams that were set aside when reality demanded practicality. Raphael listened to everything with an attention few men would have, and when she finished, he said, "You can still study. I can pay for whatever college you want. Distance learning, in person, whatever works best. You don't have to give up your dreams, Marina." The offer left her speechless. It wasn't just money he was offering. It was an investment in her, support, a belief that she deserved more than she already had. Physical proximity also began to change. Before, they maintained a respectful, almost formal distance. Now Raphael found excuses to be close. He sat closer on the sofa when they talked after dinner. He touched her arm when he wanted emphasis on some point. He adjusted a lock of hair that fell on her face with a natural gesture. Marina reciprocated. She straightened his tie before events. She placed her hand on his shoulder when she passed behind the chair where he was working. They were small touches but charged with intention. Both knew they were testing limits, approaching boundaries they had established at the beginning. The tension reached its limit on a Friday night, after a particularly difficult week. Raphael had faced a serious problem with a pest in the coffee plantation, had lost a significant part of the harvest, and was visibly shaken. Marina noticed when he arrived home quieter than usual, with a closed expression. She prepared a light dinner, served the wine he liked, and put on low music. During the meal, she tried to talk about other subjects, but he answered in monosyllables. When they finished eating, instead of retiring as he did when he was worried, Raphael went to the porch and stood looking at the darkness of the pastures. Marina followed him. She stood beside him in silence for a few minutes, just sharing the space, until she said in a soft voice, "You are not alone in this. Whatever you need, I'll do. If it's to stay quiet here by your side, I will. If it's to listen to you vent, I will. If it's to leave you in peace, I will go. But don't pretend everything is fine when it's not with me." Raphael turned to her, and Marina saw something break in that look. He held her face with both hands, a sudden but careful gesture, and said in a husky voice, "I don't deserve you. I didn't plan this. I didn't want to feel anything. But I can't pretend anymore that you are just my wife by convenience. You've become everything, Marina. I think about you all the time. I miss you when you're not near. I need your opinion before making decisions. I wake up wanting to see your face, and I don't know how to deal with that." Marina's heart beat so hard she thought he could hear it. "Raphael," but he continued, as if he needed to let out everything he had been keeping inside. "I love you. I know it wasn't supposed to happen, that we agreed on something else. But it happened. And if you don't feel the same, I will respect that. I will maintain my distance. I will continue to respect you as my wife. But I needed you to know. I needed to stop lying." Marina felt tears finally escape, not out of sadness but out of immense relief. "You think I don't feel it? Why do you think I spend my days waiting for you to come home? Do you think I care so much about your opinion, your comfort, your well-being out of convenience? Raphael, I love you too. I don't know exactly when it started. I think it was little by little, in every gesture of yours, in every conversation, in every moment you showed me that I have value. You gave me back something I thought I had lost forever, the ability to trust. And I love you for that and for everything you are." Raphael kissed her before she could say anything else. It was an intense kiss, urgent, full of months of restraint. Marina reciprocated with everything she had, hands in his hair, body pressed against his. When they separated to breathe, he leaned his forehead against hers and whispered, "Come with me." It was not a request, it was a necessity. Marina agreed without words, and he guided her into the house, up the stairs to his room. They stopped at the door. Raphael looked at her, giving her a chance to back away. Marina went in, pulled him with her, and closed the door. That night, the marriage became complete in every sense. It was not just physical consummation, it was emotional surrender. Raphael touched Marina like someone discovering a rare treasure, with reverence and intensity. She surrendered without reservations, leaving behind all fears, all scars. It was different from everything she had imagined. There was no rush, no performance. There was total presence, attention to what the other needed, mutual discovery. When they finally fell asleep, already in the late hours of the morning, they were intertwined, skin against skin, breaths synchronized. Marina was sure she had found her place in the world, and Raphael held her as if he would never let go. They woke up with the sun already high. Raphael kissed her shoulder and said, his voice still raspy from sleep, "Good morning, love." The words were simple, but they carried immense weight. It was the first time he used an affectionate term. Marina turned to him, smiled, and replied, "Good morning." They stayed in bed longer than they should have, talking, laughing, rediscovering one another under a different light. When they finally went down for breakfast, Donna Irene looked at the two with an expression that mixed approval and satisfaction. She said nothing, but Marina realized the housekeeper had noticed the change, and she was happy for them. The following days were a complete transformation. Raphael no longer slept in the room next door. Every night they retired together, talked until late, loved each other with an intensity that grew instead of diminishing. During the day, they continued working as always, but now there were stolen kisses when no one was looking, hands that met under the table during meetings, looks that said everything without words. The farm continued to run perfectly, but now it had a different energy. The employees noticed the boss was lighter, less stern. Donna Irene commented she had never seen the house so alive. Marina blossomed in this new phase. The trust Raphael placed in her, The love he showed without reservations, the way he treated her as an equal partner in everything, made her an even stronger version of herself. She enrolled in a distance learning administration course, as Raphael had suggested. She began to actively participate in meetings of the Agricultural Federation, giving opinions that were heard and respected. She became a reference among the other farmers' wives, who came to ask for advice on management, on how to balance personal and professional life. Marina, who was once despised for lacking social refinement, was now admired precisely for having earned genuine respect. But the final test would come at an unexpected moment. Raphael needed to go to São Paulo for an important meeting with international investors. Marina accompanied him. During the event, they met Tiago and Camila again. This time, the reaction was completely different. Tiago tried to be cordial, greeting the two with forced politeness. Camila hardly looked at Marina, clearly uncomfortable. Raphael was polite but distant, giving no opening for a long conversation. When they walked away, Marina expected to feel anger, a desire to prove something, but she felt only indifference. Tiago didn't matter anymore. That past had no power over her. She looked at the husband beside her, at this man who truly loved her, who had chosen her every day, and realized that the best revenge wasn't rubbing success in his face. It was simply being happy. On the way back to the farm, Raphael asked how she had felt meeting her ex again. Marina thought before answering. "I felt pity," she said honestly. "Pity for someone who confuses status with happiness. Pity for someone who gives up real people for a facade. But I also felt gratitude, because if he hadn't dismissed me that way, I never would have accepted your proposal. I never would have discovered what it is to be truly loved. So in the end, he did me a favor." Raphael smiled, that rare smile that lit up his face. "Lucky for me he was an idiot," he said, and Marina laughed, light, free. Months later, on a Sunday afternoon, the two were on the porch watching the sunset. Marina was lying with her head on Raphael's lap, him distractedly stroking her hair. "You know what's funny?" she said. "When I accepted your marriage proposal, I thought I was giving up on love. I thought I was choosing security in exchange for feeling. But I discovered that sometimes the truest love comes from the most improbable place. It comes disguised as practicality, as respect, as partnership. And when it finally reveals itself, it's more solid than any fairy tale passion." Raphael leaned over and kissed her forehead. "You taught me that. You taught me that you can be practical and romantic at the same time. That real love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. And I choose you every day, Marina. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because my life only makes sense with you in it." The words were simple, direct, without flourishes. Exactly the way Raphael was, and exactly the way Marina needed to hear. That night, when they went to sleep, Marina looked around the room that was now theirs. She thought about the journey she had made to get there, about the humiliation that almost destroyed her, the pain that almost defined her, the fear that almost paralyzed her. And she thought about how everything had transformed, not by magic, not by a fairy tale, but by finding someone who saw her as she really was and loved her precisely for that. She fell asleep in Raphael's arms, knowing she had finally found her place. Not in social position, not in material comfort, although she had both, but in the heart of a man who was worth every risk she had taken. Life at Santa Helena Farm had found a perfect rhythm. Marina and Raphael functioned like gears of an old clock, each movement complementing the other with natural precision. She had taken full control of the domestic administration and a significant part of the financial management of the property. He continued to be responsible for operational and commercial decisions, but always consulted her before closing any important business. They became a team, in the fullest sense of the word. And the love between the two only grew, solidified in routine, in respect, in small daily gestures that meant more than grand declarations. It was during this period of stability that the news came that would change everything. Raphael received a tempting proposal from an international holding company interested in acquiring a significant part of the farm. It wasn't a complete sale, it would be a partnership. Santa Helena would keep the name, the operational autonomy, but would have a gigantic injection of capital to modernize, expand, and reach markets that alone would take decades to conquer. Financially, it was a unique opportunity. The value offered was obscene. It would guarantee a comfortable future for generations. But it came with a complex condition. Rafael would have to spend half the year in São Paulo, coordinating the integration with the group's other properties. It would be a promotion, a definitive entry into the business elite of agribusiness. Everything he could want in professional terms. When he told Marina, she saw the excitement in his eyes, but also the hesitation. "It's a unique chance," he said, but his tone carried doubt. Marina analyzed the proposal with a cool head, reading every clause of the preliminary contract. From a business point of view, it was an excellent deal, but from a personal point of view, it implied enormous changes. 6 months in São Paulo meant an apartment in the capital, an urban routine, distance from the farm that was their home. It meant constant social events, intense networking, insertion into circles Marina knew superficially, but in which she still felt out of place at times. It meant less time together, more pressure, a life completely different from the one they had built. "What do you think?" Rafael asked after she finished reading. Marina took a deep breath. "I think financially it's impeccable. I think professionally it's a giant leap forward. But I think you need to decide what you really want. Not what seems right, not what others would expect. What you, Rafael, want for the future." He was quiet, looking out the office window. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to accept, wants to prove that I can expand my father's legacy beyond what he imagined. But another part is afraid of losing what we've built here, afraid that this change will destroy what we have." Marina approached him, took his hand. "It won't destroy what we have. We are stronger than a change of city or a tight schedule. But you need to be honest. Do you want this for the challenge, or because you feel you have to prove something?" The question hit home. Rafael thought for a long time before answering. "Maybe a bit of both. Maybe I still have that voice in my head saying I need to do more, be more, conquer more. A legacy from my father, who was never satisfied, who always wanted the next step." Marina shook her head. "Your father built an empire here on this land, not in São Paulo, not in holding company meetings. Here, you've already proven you can maintain and improve what he left. You don't need to prove anything else to anyone, Rafael. Not to his memory, not to society, not to yourself." The words kept echoing. Rafael asked for a week to think. The holding representatives agreed, but made it clear the proposal had a deadline. Meanwhile, the news leaked. Not officially, but the agricultural world is small, and big news travels fast. Soon there was speculation everywhere. Some said Rafael was a visionary, that he was taking Santa Helena to another level. Others criticized him, saying he was selling his soul, betraying family tradition for money. Marina saw the weight he carried increasing every day, the tension in his back, the way he slept poorly at night, until the interference that no one expected came. Rafael's mother, Dona Lucinda, who lived in a smaller house on the property, asked to speak with the two of them. She was a woman in her early 70s, elegant but without affectation, owner of wisdom accumulated over decades of experience. The three sat in her living room, and the old lady went straight to the point. "Rafael, I heard about the proposal. I came here not to give an opinion, but to remind you of one thing. Your father built this farm with sweat and determination because he wanted to leave a solid legacy. But in the last years of his life, I saw him regret having spent so much time working and so little time living. He admitted this to me before he died. He said he traded moments with you for meetings, affection for obligation, life for work, and he made me promise that I wouldn't let you make the same mistake." Rafael turned pale. "He never told me that." Dona Lucinda smiled sadly. "Because he had pride, because a man of his generation didn't admit vulnerability. But in the end, when he was dying, he opened his heart. And do you know what he said was truly worth it? It wasn't the record harvests, it wasn't the million-dollar contracts. It was the family breakfast he skipped to go to the field earlier. It was his son's birthday he missed because he had a business trip. It was his wife's look that he neglected for years, thinking he would have time later. Rafael, you have a chance your father didn't have. You have Marina. You have a real partner, you have real love, you have balance. Don't throw that away chasing a ghost." The silence that followed was heavy. Marina held Raphael's hand, feeling him tremble slightly. Donna Lucinda continued, now looking at Marina. "And you, my daughter, don't let him make this decision alone. Don't be a martyr who accepts everything in the name of supporting her husband. If this change is going to make you unhappy, say so. Marriage is a partnership. No one can be well if the other is being destroyed inside." Marina looked at her mother-in-law with gratitude. The lady had put into words what she had been feeling but was afraid to express. When they returned to the main house, the conversation they needed to have finally happened. Raphael sat heavily on the sofa and said, "I don't want São Paulo. I don't want half the year away from here, away from you. I don't want the life of an urban executive, events every week, forced networking. I want to wake up with you every day, work on the land that is mine, have dinner on our porch watching the sun set. I want to build a family here, raise children running among the coffee trees. I want to grow old by your side in this house, and if that means giving up being a billionaire, having an international empire, then so be it. Because I realized one thing. I already have an empire. I have you, and you are worth more than any holding company." Marina felt tears fall, but this time they were of pure happiness. "Are you sure? Because I'll support you if you want to accept. I'll go with you to São Paulo. I'll learn to navigate those circles. I'll make it work. But," she paused, "but I'll admit I prefer to stay here. I prefer our simple life, our rhythm, our peace. I prefer to have you whole half the time than to share you with the corporate world all year round." Raphael pulled her onto his lap, hugging her tightly. "Then it's decided I'm going to refuse the proposal. And you know what? I feel relieved, as if a giant weight had been lifted from my shoulders." The next day, Raphael called the holding representatives and politely declined. He explained that he valued their trust, but that his priorities were clear and did not include a radical change of life. There were attempts at negotiation, offers of better conditions, but he maintained his position. When he hung up the phone for the last time, he looked at Marina and smiled. "There. I chose us." She kissed him with an intensity that communicated everything that didn't fit into words. The decision resonated. Some thought Raphael had gone crazy, that he had wasted a unique opportunity. Others, especially the older ones, respected the choice. They commented that it was rare to see a young man with such a well-placed head, who knew how to differentiate success from fulfillment. Donna Lucinda embraced her son with tears in her eyes and said, "Your father would be proud, not because of the farm, but because of the man you have become." Marina also faced comments. Some women in local society insinuated that she had held her husband back, that she was afraid of not being able to handle life in São Paulo, that she was insecure about losing him to the corporate world. But Marina was not shaken. She knew the truth. She and Raphael had made the decision together, as they always did, and they had chosen happiness instead of status, presence instead of power. There was no shame in that. There was wisdom. With the decision made and the pressure relieved, the two were able to focus on what really mattered, building a future on the farm, their way. Raphael implemented the improvements he had been planning, invested in sustainable technology, and in the certifications Marina had suggested months ago. Santa Helena became a reference in responsible production, conquering premium markets that paid more for quality and ethics. Financially, they continued to prosper, but more importantly, emotionally they were fulfilled. It was in this context of regained peace that Marina discovered she was pregnant. The news came on an ordinary morning, after she had spent a week feeling strange, nauseous, tired. She took the test alone, in the bathroom, and when she saw the positive result, she was paralyzed. It was not a bad shock. It was the shock of realizing that the life she had built was about to expand, that the love between her and Raphael was going to take a concrete form, that the future they imagined was becoming real. She told him that same night. She didn't plan a special moment, she didn't make a production. She simply showed him the test during dinner and said, "We're going to be parents." Raphael looked at the test, looked at her, and his expression went through several emotions in seconds: shock, disbelief, explosive joy. He got up from his chair so fast he almost knocked it over, pulled Marina into an embrace that lifted her off the ground, spun her in the air. When he finally put her back down, he had tears in his eyes. "Are you sure?" she laughed. "I took 3 tests, I'm sure." He kissed her urgently, then knelt down and kissed her still flat belly. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me everything." Marina looked at this man kneeling in front of her. This man who had chosen her when no one else believed she had value. This man who had given up an empire to stay with her. This man who was now going to be the father of her child. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that she had made all the right choices. That accepting that cold and practical marriage proposal had been the wisest decision of her life, because it had led her there, to this moment of happiness so complete it barely fit in her chest. That night, lying in bed, hands intertwined, Raphael said, "Remember when you said you thought you would end up alone?" Marina confirmed. "I remember." He kissed her fingers. "Look where you are now. Loved, expecting our child, mistress of your own life. The man who dismissed you doesn't know what he lost, but I know what I gained. I gained everything." The months of pregnancy transformed Marina in ways she didn't expect. Her body changed, gaining new curves, her belly growing slowly but steadily. But more than that, something internal changed. A deep serenity took over her, as if every cell in her body knew it was doing exactly what it should do. Raphael treated her like precious porcelain, but without infantilizing exaggerations. He continued to consult her on farm decisions, but now he carried the heavy bags of documents, insisted she rest more. Prepared tea when she felt nauseous. Donna Irene became a fierce ally, ensuring Marina ate right, didn't overexert herself, and had everything she needed. The news of the pregnancy spread through the region like fire in dry pasture. There was genuine celebration. The farm employees were happy, seeing it as a sign of continuity of the future. Donna Lucinda cried with joy, saying she would finally have a grandchild to spoil. And the local community, which had followed Marina's story from afar, from the simple girl from the interior to the respected wife of Rafael Alcantara, saw that pregnancy as the crowning of a journey. Some women who were previously jealous of her now felt admiration, because Marina had proven it was possible to maintain essence, dignity, and character, even when life changed radically. During the pregnancy, Marina and Raphael grew even closer, if that were possible. He talked to her belly every night, telling her about the day, making promises about the future. He told the baby they would have a present father, grow up with plenty of love, know every inch of the farm, and learn to value work but also to enjoy life. Marina listened to it all emotionally, knowing that Raphael was talking not only to his child, but also healing his own wounds from having had a distant father. He was breaking the cycle, choosing to be different. They prepared the baby's room together. Raphael insisted on painting the walls himself, choosing a neutral shade of light green that would work for either a boy or a girl, since they had decided not to find out the sex before the birth. Marina chose the furniture, simple but beautiful, prioritizing functionality. Donna Lucinda knitted blankets, booties, and little hats. Donna Irene organized the complete layette, washing every piece with neutral soap and leaving everything smelling of lavender. The whole house was mobilized for the arrival of the child. It was during the 7th month that something unexpected happened. Marina was in the city for a prenatal appointment when she literally bumped into Camilla Fonseca outside the doctor's office. The two looked at each other with mutual surprise. Camilla was visibly uncomfortable but tried to maintain her composure. "Marina, hi, I didn't know you were pregnant. Congratulations." The voice was polite but cold. Marina, holding her already large belly, replied with genuine kindness, "Thank you. And you, are you okay?" Camilla looked at her own still flat belly, and something broke in her expression. "I've been trying to get pregnant for 2 years. I can't. That's why I'm here going to the fertility clinic." The confession came loaded with a vulnerability Marina didn't expect. "I'm sorry," she said, and it was true. No matter how bad Camilla had been in the past, no one deserved the suffering of wanting a child and not being able to have one. Camilla gave a bitter laugh. "Ironic, isn't it? I married a man who promised the world. We have money, status, everything that's expected. But we don't have real love, and we don't have a child. Tiago is always working, always chasing the next step, the next promotion. We hardly talk. And when I look at you—" She stopped, too emotional to continue. Marina understood what she meant. She understood that Camilla was seeing in her exactly what she had given up: authenticity, real love, genuine happiness. "Camilla," she said with a firm but gentle voice, "it's never too late to start over, to demand more from the person by your side, to choose happiness instead of appearance. You deserve more than what you have. We all do." Camilla looked at her with teary eyes, nodded in agreement, and hurried away. Marina stood there for a few minutes, processing. She didn't feel satisfaction in seeing Camilla unhappy. She felt only sadness that she was trapped in the snare Marina had escaped. On the way back to the farm, she told Raphael about the meeting. He listened in silence and then said, "You are incredible, you know. You could have been petty. You could have enjoyed seeing her suffer. But you were kind. It's one of the many things I love about you." Marina leaned her head on his shoulder. "I learned from you. You taught me that revenge doesn't bring peace. Only living well does." Raphael kissed the top of her head and continued driving, his free hand resting protectively over her belly. The birth happened on a full moon night in September, 3 weeks before the expected date. Marina woke up with light contractions. She thought it was a false alarm, but Raphael didn't want to risk it. He called the doctor, packed the bag that had been ready for weeks, and took her to the hospital in Ribeirão Preto. The labor lasted 12 hours. 12 hours of pain, fear, exhaustion, but also 12 hours of Raphael holding her hand, wiping the sweat from her forehead, whispering encouragement, being an anchor in the middle of the storm. When the baby's high-pitched cry finally echoed through the delivery room, Marina collapsed in sobs of relief and joy. "It's a girl," the doctor announced. A girl. Raphael cut the umbilical cord with trembling hands, received the daughter wrapped in a pink blanket, and brought her to Marina. When she held the child for the first time, looked at that red and crumpled little face, heard the indignant cry, felt the minimal but real weight in her arms, she knew she would never be the same again. She was a mother now, and that child had come from love, from the real and solid love she built with Raphael. The girl had dark hair like her father, a small nose like her mother, and when she opened her eyes for the first time, they were light brown, a perfect mixture of the two. They named her Helena, a tribute to the farm that was their home, but also because it meant the shining one, and it seemed perfect. Helena Alcantara came into the world surrounded by love, expected, desired, celebrated. Raphael wouldn't let go of his daughter. He held her with reverent care, talked to her, promised her the world. Marina watched them, husband and daughter, and felt her heart overflowing with gratitude. Gratitude for the journey that brought her there, for the choices she made, for the pains she survived, for the love she found when she stopped looking. When they returned to the farm with Helena, they were received like royalty. Donna Irene had decorated the entrance with flowers. The employees gathered to welcome them. Donna Lucinda waited anxiously to hold her granddaughter. It was a genuine celebration, full of affection and hope. Marina, holding Helena in her lap, looked around and thought about how surprising life could be. She, who was once dismissed for not being good enough, was now a mother, a loved wife, the mistress of one of the most important houses in the region. But more than titles or positions, she was happy. Truly happy. The first few months with Helena were challenging. Sleepless nights, constant crying, the learning curve of how to care for such a fragile life. But Marina and Raphael faced everything together, sharing responsibilities, supporting each other, discovering together how to be parents. Raphael surprised everyone by being an extraordinarily present father. He changed diapers, woke up in the middle of the night, rocked his daughter to sleep. He adjusted the farm routine to spend more time at home. He delegated more responsibilities to trusted employees. He made it clear that family came first. When Helena was 6 months old, they had a small party at the farm. Only close family and true friends. During the celebration, Marina looked around. She saw Raphael playing with his daughter, Donna Lucinda telling stories to the guests, Donna Irene serving the cake she had made with care. She saw the house full of life, laughter and love. And she remembered when she first arrived there, nervous, insecure, thinking she would never belong. Now, she not only belonged, but was the central piece of that universe. Later, when everyone had left and Helena was sleeping in her crib, Marina and Raphael sat on the porch. It was their ritual, those moments of shared silence at the end of the day. Raphael pulled her close, and she leaned her head on his shoulder. "Are you happy?" he asked. A simple question, but loaded with meaning. Marina thought before answering. She thought of everything she had lived through, of all the versions of her that existed before this one. The Marina humiliated at a party, the Marina who gave up on love, the Marina who accepted a marriage of convenience. And now this Marina, mother, wife, fulfilled woman. "I am," she replied, "happier than I thought possible." Raphael kissed the top of her head. "Me too. You know, when I proposed marriage to you, I thought I was making a practical choice. I thought I was being smart, rational, efficient. But in reality, I was being lucky. Because I found you. And you transformed my life in ways I can't even explain. You taught me that love doesn't have to be dramatic to be deep. That partnership can be romantic. That building something together, day after day, is more beautiful than any explosive passion." Marina turned to look at him. "You saved my life, Raphael. Not just materially, although that too, but emotionally. You gave me back the ability to trust, to love, to believe that I was enough. The man who despised me said I would end up alone, and for a long time I believed it. But he was wrong. I didn't end up alone. I ended up loved, surrounded by people who value me, living a life I never imagined. And it all started when I stopped looking for approval in the wrong places and accepted the hand you extended." They stayed embraced as night fell over the farm. From there they could hear the cattle in the distance, the wind in the trees, the crickets singing. They could feel the peace they built, brick by brick, choice by choice. It was not an easy journey. There was pain, there was fear, there were challenges, but it was worth every step, because it brought them there, to that moment of absolute plenitude. Helena cried from the room. Marina got up to attend to her, but Raphael held her back. "I'll go." He went into the house and returned minutes later with his daughter in his arms, already calmed. He sat down again beside Marina, Helena nestled against his chest, already falling back to sleep. Marina looked at the scene, husband and daughter, and felt tears of happiness. "Thank you," she whispered. Raphael looked at her confused. "For what?" She smiled. "For everything. For having chosen me when no one else wanted me. For having loved me the way no one ever has. For having given me this life, this family, this happiness. For everything." Raphael extended his free hand, and Marina intertwined her fingers in his. "You don't need to thank me, I'm the one who thanks you. Every day I'm thankful that you accepted my crazy proposal, for having given this strange marriage a chance, for having stayed, for having loved me back. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Marina. You and her." He looked at Helena, sleeping. "You are my world." The three stayed there, a small but complete family under the starry sky of the São Paulo interior. Marina thought about Tiago, about how he probably continued chasing status, power, things that in the end meant nothing. She thought about how she could have been in the same situation as Camilla, trapped in an empty marriage, unhappy despite the money. But she wasn't. She was exactly where she should be, with whom she should be, living the life she deserved after suffering so much. There was no dramatic revenge, no moment of rubbing success in the face of the one who humiliated her. The true victory was quieter, deeper. It was waking up every day beside a man who loved her. It was seeing her daughter grow up healthy and loved. It was having built a home, a family, a future based on solid values. It was having overcome the pain without becoming bitter. It was having found love when she stopped looking. It was being happy, genuinely happy, without needing to prove anything to anyone. Marina Alcântara, formerly Marina Oliveira, the countrywoman who was despised for not having a surname or refinement, was now exactly who she always should have been, herself. Strong, dignified, loved, complete. The journey had been long and painful, but it had been worth every tear, because it brought her to Raphael, to Helena, to that porch where love was so real it could be touched. And when Helena woke up again, whimpering, Marina took her in her arms and began to rock her. softly singing a lullaby that her own mother used to sing to her when she was a child. Raphael watched them, a smile on his face, love in his eyes. And in that simple moment, in that everyday scene of a mother rocking her daughter while a father watches with tenderness, was all the happiness Marina always deserved, but only found when she stopped doubting her own value. The story that began with public humiliation and a broken heart ended with true love and a family built on a solid foundation. Marina proved that a happy ending isn't finding a charming prince. It's finding a real partner, building something true, and choosing every day to be happy. And she chose. Every day she chose.